Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. My name is Nick, and it's we're finally close to the end of 2020, thank God. And I decided, while a lot of people are kind of looking back at some of the best albums of 2020, I kind of decided to look back over the last 10 years and kind of look at the last decade's worth of maybe not the best albums, but at least my favorite albums. So if you go all the way back to the year 2011, there's a couple of albums that probably top a lot of people's lists, and that's 21 by Adele, which is a fantastic album, and Watch the Throne by Jay-Z and Kanye. Like I said, both in their own right, they're both fantastic albums. But for me, in 2011, now granted, this is kind of funny. This is actually an album. The one I picked is an album that I never even listened to until sometime last year. And it's Damnesia by Alkaline Trio. So if you've never listened to Alkaline Trio, they're a great pop punk kind of band. Even though I hate the term pop punk, they're a punk rock band formed in the mid '90s. This is if you're a Blink-182 fan, Matt Skiba is the lead singer of Alkaline Trio. It's a fantastic album. It kind of covers their entire career. It's not really like a greatest hits album, but they took their biggest hits and they did acoustic versions of those songs. It's a fantastic album. If you haven't heard it, definitely check this one out. It's one that I listen to quite often. For 2012, there's a couple of albums that really stood out to me. One being Uno by Green Day, which, I've been a big Green Day fan since the mid-90s. And in my opinion, Uno is probably their last really great album. So that's one that really stood out to me. Another one I'd say is Blunderbuss by Jack White, another fantastic album. It was one that I didn't listen to the White Stripes a whole lot until I listened to Blunderbuss and really kind of brought me into Jack White's world. But the one that really stood out to me is an album that, when growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, I got into the rap from that period. Public Enemy, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, that classic kind of rap period there. But really from the late 90s until 2012, I'd really kind of gone away from a lot of it and didn't listen to a lot of it. And then I listened to Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. This is his second studio album. It's a fantastic album. And, I've been a big fan of Kendrick Lamar ever since this album. It's one that another one that I listen to quite often. And it's if you haven't listened to it, definitely check it out. So there was two big albums in 2013 that really stood out to me. Unfortunately, I don't have either one of them on vinyl. I would definitely love to, but Nothing Was the Same by Drake is a fantastic album. But one that I picked that really stood out to me was Yeezus by Kanye West. I know Kanye gets a lot of flack for his public persona and some of the antics he's done over the years, but it's really hard to deny the brilliance of his music. And for me, Yeezus is my third favorite album of his. I think 808s and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is kind of 1 and 2 for me, and then Yeezus falls in that third slot. I've seen a couple of bootlegs out there of it. I'll probably end up picking one up, but it's just a fantastic album. And like I said, with that Kendrick Lamar album, Good Kid, Mad City in 2012, kind of brought me back into the rap genre, and it kind of carried through 2013. So in 2014, there's, of course, 1989 by Taylor Swift was a great album. I know there's Taylor Swift's another one of those artists, kind of like Kanye, that gets a lot of grief out there in the music community. But 1989 is a fantastic album. Another album that came out that year, and one that I never listened to until just recently. I ended up picking up Run the Jewels 4. So Walmart was doing their, obviously, they did their vinyl sale a couple weeks back, and of course, everyone in the vinyl community knows about it. But I ended up picking up Run the Jewels 4. And that was kind of my first foray into their music. So I went back and listened to their first couple albums. Run the Jewels 2 is a fantastic album. So it's another one that really stood out in 2014. But the one for me, I've been a big Pink Floyd fan for a long time. And 2014 saw the end of Pink Floyd musically. After Richard Wright died a couple of years earlier, the band kind of drifted for a little bit. Obviously, they ceased to make any music or really ceased to be a band after Richard Wright's death. And, they went back in 2014 and picked up a lot of the musical tracks that Richard Wright had laid down for the Division Bell through the Division Bell sessions. And they put together a new album to kind of finish off the career of Pink Floyd and to really be a tribute to Richard Wright. And that is The Endless River. And this is not your typical Pink Floyd music. This is much more on the ambient side. It's soft music. It's something you can kind of toss on the background. And me, I'm a big jazz fan, so I'm used to kind of listening to albums like that. And this is a great album. Obviously, it's not Animals, it's not The Wall, it's not Dark Side of the Moon, but it is its own entity, and I think it's a great tribute to Richard Wright and kind of what the heartbeat of Pink Floyd really was. So it's one that definitely stood out to me, and it's an album that even among Pink Floyd fans is kind of controversial, but it's one that I definitely love. So I guess I do need to warn you, the next couple of picks are definitely going to be rap heavy. There was the over this next 4-year period, there was just some great rap music that came out. But in 2015, there's one that really stood out, but a couple of other ones that really not necessarily rap that were great albums from that year. Adele's 25, which is a fantastic album. I do have that on vinyl. And another one that I do have on vinyl that Ian has given me grief for, and I'm sure someone will drop some comments down below and let me know. And that is Purpose by Justin Bieber. I'm not a Justin Bieber fan, even though I do have Purpose, and I do have his last album that he just released, was it this year or late last year? But Purpose is a great album for what it is. The kind of rock, kind of R&B kind of thing. It really works. It's just a really great album. If you can forget that it's Justin Bieber and just put it on and listen to it. Like I said, it's a great album. But the one that I picked that really stood out head and shoulders over everything else was, here, I'll pull it out of the sleeve so it looks a little better so it's not so shiny in my camera, is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. Like I said, Good Kid, Mad City kind of brought me into him. And then this album kind of really solidified my fandom for Kendrick Lamar. This is a great album. And it's another album, like I said, that I listen to quite often. I've got this on CD also, so it's just a fantastic album, and it won a lot of accolades and awards. And I think it really kind of brought everyone around to the greatness that is his music. So a lot of the lists for 2016 had Beyonce's Lemonade up at the top spot, and it is fitting for that spot. It is a great album. Even though I'm not a big Beyonce fan, it is a fantastic album. This one I probably should eventually pick up on vinyl just to have. But another one is Black Star by David Bowie. Just another great album, great legacy to David Bowie's career. But the one that really stood out to me was Awaken My Love by Childish Gambino. So, Donald Glover is, obviously he's kind of left the music scene behind and is really focused on his acting career. But prior to Awaken My Love, Donald Glover was known for, his rap career. Obviously he was on Community also, but, he always did rap. He always rapped on his albums. And then Awaken My Love came out and it was completely different. This album is much more like a soul, funk, R&B 70s album than rap. And it's just, that's the one thing I really love about Donald Glover and what he did with Childish Gambino is he always looked to kind of evolve his music and to move on to different things. And he wasn't afraid to try things out, and he really hit the mark with this album. So 2017 was actually a really great year in music. There's a lot of really good albums that came out that year. One that really kind of stood out to me was The Knife by Goldfinger. Goldfinger was a great punk rock band in the mid to late 90s, and they broke up for a long time, and then prior to the creation of this album, John Feldman put together, I guess you'd call it a super group. He brought in Mike Herrera from MXPX, Travis Barker from Blink-182, and they created this album, which is just a fantastic album. It's probably my favorite Goldfinger album. Another one is Damn by Kendrick Lamar, kind of carrying through, his kind of catalog that I've, mentioned several times on this episode. Damn was a great album. won a lot of awards that year. You know, Linkin Park's One More Light was another album that really stood out to me. I after after the suicide of their lead singer, I think the album people paid a little bit more attention to the album. Great album, kind of a little more reminiscent, for at least for me, of their first couple of albums. Let's see what else is on there. Is This the Life We Really Want by Roger Waters? I'm not a huge fan of the solo work from the members of Pink Floyd. David Gilmour's released a couple of really good albums. At least his last two albums have been really good. And then this one by Roger Waters, just a fantastic, fantastic album. I know when he went into the recording studio to kind of start this process for this album, he went into the studio with a kind of theme in mind, like he did for a lot of his solo albums and, the last 4 or 5 Pink Floyd albums. And when he sat down with the producer was like, look, and for life of me, I don't remember who produced the album, but the producer was like, look, let's focus on creating really great music and not so much worry about the overall theme of the album. And, the result, I think, is some of the best work of Roger Waters' career. Another one is, I'm not a huge country music fan, but this is a really great country album, and that's From a Room, Volume 1 by Chris Stapleton. I know Chris has a bunch of fans out there, but this is a really great album, and, it's one that I still, to this day, I still don't listen to a lot of country music, but that is definitely one that I'll put on. And another one, the one that really, has probably really stood out to me is Everybody by Logic. And this is an album that from the first time I heard it, I think I bought this, at least the digital copy of this, and Damn by Kendrick Lamar, I believe on the same day. I'm not sure if they were released the same day or not, but I definitely bought them both on the first day. And I love this album from the first time from the first listen, the first play of the very first song. And the funny thing is that this album here is really hard to find. And it's one that I kind of stumbled across. I believe I talked about it on the show before. And that's, I know I talked about it online on Facebook and stuff, but it's one that, like I said, when Logic releases an album, for several of them, or quite a few of them, he will open like an online store, and basically whatever is pre-ordered is all it's made. So his albums tend to be pretty hard to come across. This I bought used for like 10 or 11 bucks. I think it might have been maybe 11, 12, 13 bucks, somewhere around there. But it was definitely a lot less than the $150 to $200 it goes for online. So for 2018, there's one album that really I loved from the first time I heard it. Anthem of the Peaceful Army is an album that I know Greta Van Fleet gets a lot of grief, in the music community for. I know they say they sound too much like Led Zeppelin. This album does not, though. I know some of their earlier stuff definitely has a 70s Led Zeppelin vibe. But if you haven't listened to this album, definitely give it a spin. It is a fantastic, fantastic album. And I can't wait to hear what their new stuff what their new album sounds like. I know they've been working on it for, I think, all of 2020 so far. But the one album that I really picked for this year, and it is another rap album, and that's Young Sinatra 4 by Logic. And, if you are a rap fan and you haven't listened to this album, definitely give it a spin. He brought back together Wu-Tang Clan for this album. They did a track on here. Just from beginning to end is fantastic album. The first couple of, he did 3 mixtapes earlier in his career that were titled Young Sinatra, and they were all kind of around that Rat Pack kind of vibe. And this is kind of the culmination of that series. So that's where the name Young Sinatra 4 came from. But it's just, I haven't been a big fan of his last couple of albums, but this one really is great. This is probably just behind Everybody is probably one of my favorite Logic albums. So if you stuck around to this point in the video, you can kind of see a recurring theme going on here, that there's really not a whole lot of new rock music involved in here. And I don't know, just because I'm a crotchety old man now and I don't get the new rock, but I don't know, it just doesn't speak to me. Maybe I'm just missing out on something. Like, I guess Greta Van Fleet falls in the new rock category, but they're kind of like a throwback to that 70s rock. But for 2019, there's really not a whole lot as far as new music or new artists out there that really clicked with me. Lover by Taylor Swift was a really great album. You know, she's not a newer artist. She's been around since the mid 2000s, but, you know, that was a really great pop album that came out that year. Hollywood's Bleeding was a great rap album by Post Malone that came out that year. You know, both of those were really good albums, but the one that really stuck out to me, you know, maybe because I am a little biased when it comes to this album, and that's 9 by Blink-182. You know, I've been a big Blink fan since the, you know, really early, you know, not early, but early on in their career, but the, you know, late 90s, you know, probably 96, 97 was probably the first time I heard them. But Blink is one of those bands that's definitely in my top 3 artists, and it's, you know, 9 is just a fantastic album that is really kind of reminiscent of, you know, that early 2000s albums from Blink, you know, the, you know, Untitled album from 2003, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Those are, you know, some really classic kind of Blink-182 albums, and I feel like 9 really kind of fits right into that category. Even though a lot of Blink fans hate this album, hate anything that Blink-182 has done since Tom DeLonge left the band after Neighborhoods, you know, but I don't know. I love this. I definitely love this album. It's for me, it's probably one of my favorite Blink-182 albums. So it finally brings us to 2020. And, you know, there were some really great albums that came out this year. Gigaton by Pearl Jam is one that really stands out. Folklore by Taylor Swift is another one that's really great. Death at Venice Beach by the Bomb Pops. If you haven't heard the Bomb Pops yet and you are a punk rock fan, definitely check them out. You know, that's just a really great album. They've got actually everything from the Bomb Pops. I really like all their albums so far. And but the one that I picked as my favorite album for 2020 is one that, you know, kind of falls in the line of Blink-182. And like I said, I've actually done a video on this album before. I drop a link above if you want to watch that one. But that's Take Us to My Downfall by Machine Gun Kelly. It's a great punk rock album. You know, here you got a guy that's known for rap. You know, he was rap his entire career, and then you know, he decided as a fan of punk rock, that early 2000s punk rock, that he wanted to do a punk rock album. And so he brought in Travis Barker from Blink-182, and they crafted this just like punk rock classic. If you're a fan of the early 2000s punk rock, this is an album that definitely fits right into that. And just one that, you know, I really love every song on this album. You can kind of go back through and listen to it several times over, and it's just a really great, fun album. And I think he accomplished what he wanted to do with this. And hopefully, kind of moving forward, we'll see a little bit more of this. And hopefully the popularity of this album will kind of bring back that punk rock genre out there. And it just encourage more artists to kind of do something maybe along this lines and kind of bring that back. Because like I said, just a great album, really reminiscent of a great period in that punk rock genre, but just a great album. Well, that's all I got for you this week, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. You know, hopefully I didn't ramble on too much about these albums. I don't know, I think this period, this last 10 years, I think it's a bad rap when people look at it and talk about music and, you know, really say it's not a really great period of music overall. And I don't know, there really is some really great music that came out in the last 10 years. You know, these are just my favorites. You know, you can always drop me a comment down below and let me know what your favorites from the last 10 years are. And, you know, let me know some of the ones that I missed. There's a whole bunch of them I could have put on here. But like I said, those were just the 10 that really kind of stood out to me. You know, if you haven't done so yet, go out and check out our Facebook group. I'll drop a link down below for that. There's I don't know, it's been slowly growing over the last, 3 or 4 weeks. It's just kind of like an extension from this show. We're just talking about music and talking about albums and some of the stuff we love. And, you know, definitely join the group and join the conversation. But that's all I got. If you like the episode, give me the old thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down below. And come check out the show next Sunday. I'll be rejoined by Ian, and we're going to have a great conversation. If I was a good host, I'd tell you what the topic was. But off the top of my head, I think we're going to be talking about the 50 greatest guitar solos in rock history, I believe is what the topic is. But that's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.